India, Cambodia, Pakistan, and Nepal.
Wow.
As we enter our first exhibit, we are going to see 2 species of deer and 1 species of antelope. But it's hot and our deer are out in the back end of the exhibit where there's a bit more shade. We'll see them in about 8 minutes when we come around to the far side of the exhibit. For now, we can see a couple of beautiful examples of India's national bird, the peafowl. Only the males are called peacocks. Females are called peahens. Males have long, beautiful back feathers, which they use to present themselves to females during mating season each year. After a male has successfully mated, his back feathers will fall off and will be regrown the following year. Excuse me, I have hiccups. One of the deer species we'll meet today is known as the barasinga. The word barasinga in Hindi means 12 tined, and males of this species may have anywhere between 12 and 14 points on their antlers. Barasinga are also sometimes known as swamp deer because they like to live in humid and marshy environments. To our right, we're passing a set of small huts that represent an important conservation story involving the barasinga.
In 1970, there were estimated to be only 66 of the barasinga deer remaining in central India. But this population was saved by the cooperation of the local Indian community. Like the shacks you see here, there were many small farms using space in and around India's Kanha National Park. These people were coming in contact with the deer and the tigers that were also living there. Through cooperation with the Indian government, local communities agreed to relocate the villages. By moving, the farmers still had land to farm, but the tigers and their prey got more room to roam.
And we have a very special treat coming up today, because there is going to be a baby in with our herd of Mongolian wild horses. We all know that a species that is extinct no longer exists, like the dinosaurs or the dodo bird. The animal in our next exhibit was on the verge of extinction, and we can see our baby Naren taking a nap out in the sun here. Mongolian wild horses, also known as Przewalski's horse, were extinct in nature and could only be found in captivity. Recently, there have been successful attempts to reintroduce Mongolian wild horses to certain parts of China and Mongolia, from herds in North American and Asian zoos. As you can see, there are some marked differences between these and domestic horses. Mongolian wild horses are stockier, have shorter legs, and have an erect mane that's missing the forelock, that part of the mane that falls over the horse's forehead. There are also genetic differences between the two. Mongolian wild horses are the only true wild horses in the world today, and this species has never been domesticated. Captive breeding of Mongolian wild horses started in 1901, with a herd of only 28 animals. Here at the Bronx Zoo, we received our herd in 1902, and have maintained it ever since. Here's a bit more information about the history of the Mongolian wild horse, and why this animal is sometimes known as Przewalski's horse.
The first accounts of Mongolian wild horses are rock engravings, paintings, and even cave drawings that date back over 20,000 years. And the first written
के गर्नु पानी माग्न हिँडेका मान्छे
largely unknown and unnamed to the Western world.
बुवा पानी दिनु अरे
During an
बुवा बुवा
expedition to
पानी
Central Asia in
अफ गरेर
1879,
पानी दिनु
a famous Russian explorer and
त्यो
naturalist,
भिडियो अफ गर्नु
Nikolai
न त्यो हो भने
Przewalski, encountered a horse in Western Mongolia. Because of his discovery, this species is also known as Przewalski's horse.
कस्तो चाहिँ हुँदो रहेछ त त्यहाँ छ त
The Wildlife Conservation Society's researchers in the field often have difficulty locating the animals they are looking for, especially because so many of those animals are endangered. Here at the Bronx Zoo, it can also sometimes be a challenge to spot animals in their exhibits. And just a reminder, everyone needs to be sitting down, please. Thank you. Luckily, you all have an advantage that our researchers do not. You have me. I'll be along to point out each animal as we encounter it, and to give you a bit of information about every species we meet. As we are looking for our animals today, keep in mind the places that you would go on a hot day like this, if you wanted a quiet place to rest or a little bit of shade. Look straight ahead of us at that back fence and then follow the fence along to the right. You will soon see a couple of our brow antlered deer. All of the brow antlered deer on exhibit at the Bronx Zoo are females, but the species gets its name from the look of the male's antlers, which form a low brow shape over the deer's forehead. Brow-antlered deer are currently classified as vulnerable in their native Cambodia, and habitat loss and over-farming have forced many wild herds of these deer to resort to eating agricultural crops instead of their normal food supply.
Look at that.
Further off to the right and closer in towards us, we also see several of our gaur. Gaur are the largest species of wild cattle in the world. They can weigh up to 2,000 pounds, stand 6 feet tall at the shoulder, and be over 10 feet long. That's about the size of a small car. With their impressive size and powerful horns, gaur can fight off just about any predator, even a tiger. However, they are still vulnerable to habitat loss and to the same diseases that threaten domesticated cattle species. The Wildlife Conservation Society is working in cooperation with zoos across America to protect gaur, brow-antlered deer, and similarly vulnerable species.
Here at the zoo, we help gaur and brow-antlered deer and many other species by participating in cooperative zoo management programs
Pani
called
tayo.
Species Survival Plans. The name says it all. Plans aim to help these animals survive. Zoos across the country work together to maintain genetically diverse populations of rare and endangered species.
It is easy to forget that the Bronx Zoo sits in the heart of an urban environment, but the noise we're hearing behind us now comes from traffic on the Bronx River Parkway. The fence directly in front of us is designed to mitigate that traffic noise and provide a sheltered environment for our animals here at the zoo. As we come around this corner, I'm going to ask once again that everyone please remain seated. We are going to be looking for a tiger, and he can be difficult to spot, but there is no reason to stand at any point during our tour. On the far left-hand side of our exhibit, we can see Anakin, our Amur or Siberian tiger cub. Anakin weighs close to 450 pounds, and he is not even done growing yet. When fully mature, Anakin will weigh more than 750 pounds. Tigers in the wild are solitary animals, meaning they like to live on their own, which is why we don't see any other tigers in the exhibit with Anakin today. If you'd like to see more tigers today, you can visit Tiger Mountain after our tour concludes. Tigers eat a variety of meals, but prefer pigs and medium-sized deer. A tiger will typically gorge itself on a single kill with 40 pounds worth of meat. That's the equivalent of eating 160 hamburgers all in one sitting. After a meal of that size, it's no surprise that the tiger will not eat again for several days. For those of you new to the back of the train, Anakin is at the top of the hill. Closer off to the right, he's near that tree stump on the right-hand side. Unfortunately, all tigers are endangered. Only 3,000 tigers remain in the wild today, and as few as 1,000 of those are breeding females. The Wildlife Conservation Society currently has conservation programs running in 9 countries where wild tigers still exist, and has teamed up with Panthera, a big cat conservation group, to protect these beautiful creatures in the wild. We're on the back end now of the exhibit with the gaur and brow-antlered deer. You can see some more brow-antlered deer here. And if you recall that first exhibit where I promised you deer and asked you to wait a bit, we're coming to the back of it now. On the left-hand side of our next exhibit, you can see several spotted deer. These are axis deer. Most deer species start their lives with spotted coats, but lose those spots as they mature. Axis deer, however, keep their spots throughout their lives. The Bronx Zoo has exhibited axis deer since 1899. All the way in the back, you may be able to see a few of our black buck antelope. Black buck antelope are the smallest antelope species in Asia and are sexually dimorphic, meaning that males and females look different from each other. Males are larger, darker, and have long horns, but the females do not. Finally, look all the way off to our right and follow this road back. You will see several very large honey-colored deer. Those are the Barasinga that I had described to you previously. Take a moment now to imagine a pig with tusks that are up through its snout and curve backwards towards its eyes. This is the Babirusa, and is the subject of our next exhibit. In our first exhibit, we see our female Babirusa Kathy and her piglet Hillshire. Coming up in the second pen, we'll also see 2 more Babirusa named Fez and Jillian. The word Babirusa in the Malay language means pig deer, and the species gets its name from the distinctive look of the male's tusks. Babirusa are native to the Indonesian island of Sulawesi, and like many animals on exhibit at the zoo, they are endangered. Now, I have a very important question for all of you. Who likes elephants?
Love elephant.
Elephants are the world's largest land animals, but unfortunately they are also becoming one of the rarest. Today we have the privilege of seeing our two Asian elephants, Patty and Maxine, both of whom are in about their mid-40s. In the wild, elephants can live up to 60 years of age and can weigh as much as 10,000 pounds, so they need to eat a lot of vegetation. In addition to a variety of vegetables, Patty and Maxine each eat 200 pounds of hay every day and drink 60 gallons of water. Here at the Bronx Zoo, our elephants live in the lap of luxury. As you can see, they have their own private swimming pool, and that tree trunk to the left of the pool is actually an elephant-sized back scratcher. Patty and Maxine also receive routine baths and weekly pedicures. There are over 40,000 muscles in an elephant's trunk. That's more muscles than exist in the entire human body. There is also a finger-like appendage at the end of an elephant's trunk that provides it with the dexterity needed to perform small tasks like plucking grass and drinking water. An elephant will often pluck grass and throw it over its back to fend off insects that would otherwise land there and bite it. For now, let's say goodbye to Patty and Maxine as we come around this corner and say hello to our Indian rhinoceros, Ella. Ella is sitting in a mud wallow on the far right-hand side of the exhibit. Indian rhinos are highly endangered and only 2,000 of them remain in the wild. Here at the Bronx Zoo, we care for 5 endangered Indian rhinoceros. We have had tremendous success with our rhino conservation program. The most difficult aspect of that program is breeding. Do I have any moms on board the tour today? Alright, Mom. The gestation period for an Indian rhinoceros is 16 months. Can you imagine being pregnant for almost a year and a half and giving birth to a baby that weighed more than 150 pounds? In addition, after a baby rhinoceros is born, it will stay with its mother for 2 to 3 years, although it may be weaned as soon as 12 to 16 months thereafter. Ella was born here at the zoo in 1986 and is a mother and grandmother. Most people think of rhinos as armor-plated, but in fact they are covered in a layer of skin that is extremely soft and sensitive to sunlight and insect bites. To protect that skin, rhinoceros sit in mud wallows like the one we saw Ella in today. There's a second mud wallow coming up to our right, which has been part of the rhinoceros exhibit here since the Wild Asia monorail opened in 1977. Mud wallows like these create a protective coating of mud all around a rhino's body, preventing the harm the animal would otherwise incur. Rhinos are beautiful and powerful creatures, but they are not able to fend off poachers, who want to hunt them for their horns.
The horn of a rhinoceros is very different from that of a goat or antelope. It is not attached to the skull. Rhino horn is made from compressed keratin fibers, the same material that is found in fingernails and hair. Although rhinos are a protected species, poaching is still occurs. Rhinos are killed for their body parts, as some people believe that this horn has special medicinal powers. It is also used as an ingredient in some traditional Asian medicines, and the rhino horn is also prized in some cultures for making dagger handles.
In our next exhibit, we will see several species of deer. Asia is the continent with the most deer species in the world and is valued for its biodiversity. The first deer we'll see is a spotted deer with a white rump. It's called a Formosan sika deer. Formosan sika deer are native to the island of Taiwan, formerly known as Formosa. In the early 1970s, wild herds of these deer were completely extinct due to overhunting and habitat loss, and they could only be found in captivity. So we enter this clearing, look back to your left, and you'll see 3 of them lined up against that back fence. Recently, they have been successfully reintroduced to their natural habitat, and they may now be found in certain national parks in Taiwan. For many years, the Bronx Zoo had the largest captive herd of Formosan sika deer in the world. In this exhibit, you will notice that many of our trees have been wrapped in wire. The purpose of this is to protect those trees from the animals whose habitats they create. Trees are a vital source of shelter and shade for all of our animals here at the zoo. But some deer species like to rub their antlers up against tree trunks, or even to eat tree bark. This can cause a lot of damage, and if the tree loses too much bark, it can die. So we protect our trees by wrapping them in wire. Unfortunately, it is not so easy to protect flora or fauna out in the wild. Coming up to our right, we will soon see a herd of very large, or rather, a very large herd of very small deer. These are hog deer. They get their name because they are small and squat like pigs. They also behave more like pigs and like other deer species, ducking and burrowing under obstacles rather than jumping over them. Take a look at the riverbed to our right. Follow that riverbed straight back and then look off to the left. Up against that back fence, you will see several very big, dark brown deer. Those are sambar deer. They are the largest deer native to southern Asia. When fully mature, they can weigh up to 650 pounds, stand 6 feet tall, and have antlers as long as 3 feet, with 3 points on each antler. All of the deer species that we've seen today have antlers rather than horns. Antlers are made out of solid bone and branch, meaning they have multiple points. They are also shed and regrown each year. Horns, on the other hand, are hollow. They do not branch and are never shed. All of the goat, cattle, and antelope species from our tour today have horns rather than antlers. We are stopped very briefly due to traffic on the rail ahead of us. I'll let you know as soon as we're able to get going again. And we're off. Like I promised, very brief. The animal in our next exhibit is very difficult to spot, especially because it doesn't like the hot weather, so keep your eyes peeled. We are looking for Chinese tufted deer. They weigh less than 40 pounds and have a dark chocolate brown coat that allows them to blend in easily with the background of their exhibit. Males of this species have short antlers protruding from their skulls, but females have little tufts and spurs instead, giving the species its name. Tufted deer have a white patch on their rumps which they use to communicate with each other. When alarmed, a tufted deer will raise its tail, revealing that white patch and alerting any other deer nearby to potential threats in the area. Chinese tufted deer are extremely rare in zoos outside of China, and we are very grateful to have them here at the Bronx Zoo today. We are now going to cross back over the Bronx River. This is the highest point on our tour at 35 feet above the river, and is also a beautiful photo opportunity. The Wildlife Conservation Society is dedicated to preserving the Bronx River corridor and greenway. We know how important it is not only to native New Yorkers, but also as a habitat for all the wildlife that call the river home. And if you look carefully, you can see some bass swimming down below us. If you'd like to learn more about our attempts to preserve the river, visit the Mitsubishi River Walk, located next to parking area B. The rocky terrain of our next exhibit is a perfect environment for two of our animals, both relatives of the wild goat. The first is the markhor. Markhor are the largest goat species in the world and the national animal of Pakistan. Their beautiful spiral horns can grow up to 64 inches in length. That's over 5 feet. Legend has it that a male markhor once ate a snake, and the snake tried to escape by growing outward through its skull, creating the horns we see today. Markhor are highly endangered, and only 2,000 to 4,000 of them remain in the wild today. The second animal in our exhibit is the Himalayan tahr. All of the tahr on exhibit at the zoo are females, but both male and female tahr have short triangular horns that curve backwards and inwards from their skulls. The shape of their horns prevents injury when males have headbutting battles during mating season. The core of a tahr's hoof has a rubbery surface similar to the sole of a hiking boot, which better enables tahr to grip the rugged slopes of the western Himalayan mountains and woodlands that they call home. In just a moment, we will be approaching the final animal on our tour, the red panda. Today our red panda Maymay is up in her tree. For those of you near the back of the train, look all the way to your right and you'll see her in a few seconds. For thousands of years, people have been fascinated by the color of the red panda's fur. In Nepal, the name of this animal is Hung Ho, which roughly translates as firefox. The red panda was known to the Western world years before the more famous black and white giant panda, although today we know that the two species are not closely related. They share the same specialized diet of bamboo, and indeed the word panda means bamboo eater. But red pandas are more closely related to skunks, raccoons, and weasels. If you'd like to see more red pandas today, you can visit the Himalayan Highlands exhibit, a short walk from the monorail. There you will also see one of Asia's big cats, and one of my favorite animals in the zoo, the snow leopard. As we come around this bend, our journey is almost at an end. But before we finish, I'd like to tell you a bit more about us. The Wildlife Conservation Society manages 5 parks in New York City. The Bronx Zoo, where we are today, the New York Aquarium in Coney Island, the Prospect Park Zoo in Brooklyn, the Queens Zoo, and the Central Park Zoo. We also have researchers in the field in over 300 locations around the world. If you would like to join the Wildlife Conservation Society in protecting wildlife and wildlands, stop by the Visitor Center and apply today's ticket purchase to a WCS membership. Members will receive free access to all 5 of our parks for an entire year. In addition, premium level members will receive free access to all Bronx Zoo attractions, including the Wild Asia Monorail, free parking, and a special members-only t-shirt.
Are we getting out?
In just a moment, our train will be stopping briefly while the train ahead of us reloads at the platform. This is not the final stop on our tour, so I ask that you please remain seated until I can pull up to the platform and open the train doors. Here at the Bronx Zoo, we work very hard to ensure that our animals get to flex their muscles and use their instincts the same way they would in the wild. To this end, we run a number of enrichment programs.
Enrichment is the term used to describe the wide variety of items and activities we provide for our animals to help keep them both physically and mentally active. Keepers might spray scents or hide food to encourage exploration. They may put out balls, boxes, or other so-called toys for animals to play with. Enrichment also includes husbandry training. Animal